Topo Athletic is committed to lifelong health and better movement. Topo builds running shoes for those who get out there every day, regardless of weather, speed, energy, or mood. Their distinctive fit and feel combines instinctive human movement with modern performance and lightweight comfort to help you keep going, keep trying, and keep moving. Discover the Topo difference and step into a run experience unlike any other.
Hey everybody, welcome to our Fireside Chat. We're going to be getting both Aum Gandhi and Amanda Brooks onto our today's conversation because Amanda and I go way back to the old school days when we first started blogging using Blogger, Google Blogspot, back in like 2010, 2012, somewhere in that vicinity. So super excited to have Amanda on the show. She's been invited to join us, and Aum is here with us now. Hey, buddy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? I just fixed my head. I see Amanda in the chat. My head was like cut off by half. It's guys, you know it is tradition at this point to have technical issues on our Fireside Chats. So this is all tradition. This is all played out. Like we have just decided that this is how we're going to start. This is segment 1, technical issues. Brought to you by Meta. Meta sponsor us.
Thankfully, when we put it on the podcast, you don't get any of this stuff, or when it's on our YouTube channel. So I think I pressed accept for Amanda to join us. I think this is number 7. So it'll.
Yeah.
It's.
Oh, she's like request.
Well,
yeah, you have to hit it like 7 times. It's or like,
yeah,
there it is. Yay!
Awesome. So for everybody who's joining us as we get going, just want to let you know we have a very special guest today. We're being joined by Amanda Brooks of Run to the Finish. She's a running coach with over 20 years of experience and 28,000 miles on her feet. Through her coaching and her virtual run club, she has helped thousands to achieve their fitness goals. She's enthusiastic. She loves to have fun, and that's what draws athletes to be a part of her coaching as well as just reading her posts on Instagram and through her website. She has a book called Run to the Finish and over 2,000 articles published, and is a wealth of knowledge and an inspiration to both beginners and seasoned athletes alike. So join me in welcoming Amanda, and be sure to ask questions or comment down at the bottom of the screen. Amanda, welcome to our Fireside Chat.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So in our green room, Amanda and I were talking about how far back we actually go. And I said this to her then, and I'm going to say it live now. I could not be more proud of what she has done from the first time we talked, when it was like, I believe it was on a YouTube chat 10, 12 years ago. And at the time, there was a whole host of us that were using Blogspot, and everybody was trying to figure out what we're doing. And over time, attrition has led to most of us leaving this world, and yet here you are, 12 years later. So congratulations to you on what you've been able to build.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It has been sort of fascinating to realize, like, I have an article about top running blogs, and every year it gets smaller and smaller because I'm like, well, they haven't published anything in 2 years. I guess they're not doing this anymore.
Is there a form that we can fill out for us to get our names on the list?
Heck yeah.
So, 20 years of running and 28,000 miles. What keeps you passionate about this stuff throughout that entire time?
You know what's funny is I think while I was an athlete as a kid, I was not good at running, and people even let me know that at times. Like, you're tall, you're awkward, it doesn't seem like it looks right. And so when I found running by myself at the end of college, I was just immediately like really proud of myself. Like, I did that. No one made me do that. Like, I chose to do that. And 20 years later, I still have that feeling most days. Like, 3 miles, 18 miles. I'm like, yeah, you did that. I don't know. That has kind of never left me.
Were you playing the traditional sports back in the day? Soccer, softball, baseball,
Yep.
Whatever?
So growing up, I did a lot of softball. And then once I got to high school, swim team, volleyball. So I tried all the sports. Soccer, I was not aggressive enough. Basketball, I was the tall girl who was not aggressive enough. Softball, I was pretty sure I was going to get hit by the time we were 16, and I was not interested. So, yeah, that was a pretty consistent theme.
So for most of us who played the traditional sports growing up, like running was a punishment, and so we just didn't like it. Is that your perception back then too? Like, running is a punishment. Why am I doing this?
100%. That was the only time you ran, was you were late to practice, and every once in a great while on the volleyball team we would do like drills or something, but there was very little running. And even in high school, when you had to take gym class and run the mile, I opted to take it over the summer, because I heard that over the summer, if you just wanted to walk the mile, that was okay. And so that's what I did.
I love it. I love it. So running is a punishment, and you're starting to run for yourself. So how does it transition to starting that blog, to then go into coaching, to then having coaches underneath you and coaching athletes?
So I started running 2002-ish, and then by 2005, I was in one of my first jobs, and I was actually doing like e-commerce things. So people were just figuring out like how to sell things online, which sounds insane. And someone else in the company was even more forward thinking. Like, he's the guy who went around with a video camera 24/7. And so he was like, there's these blogs, you need to do a blog. And I was like, yeah, I was a journalism major, I should do a blog. And I mean, starting out, I can find some of that old stuff, and it's like, I ate hummus for lunch. It's very like when Facebook first started, that is what the original blogs were. So sad. And really, I kind of around 2007, I just started getting really consistent with it. I was just really excited to write there all the time and get that creative outlet. And slowly I started realizing, like, I really want these to be better articles, more useful. Because I got to the point where I was like, I am not interested in reading someone's blog about their run. I don't care. So I was like, so what do people want to know? And I was like, oh, they want information. And so that's when I was like, well, if I'm going to give information, I should go get certified. And originally, even getting certified was just to have more knowledge. I didn't think I was going to do a lot of coaching. But in 2010-ish, I started running these challenges where I would have 2,000 people participating. I charged nothing because we didn't know anything about charging for anything. So I would spend hours and hours running these challenges, didn't collect a single email address. But from that, started getting requests for individual coaching. And so I was like, well, okay, I'll dabble in that. And just kind of as the years progressed, I realized how much I love using that journalism degree to write, and I liked coaching, but it kind of hit a tipping point where I just couldn't put enough time into everything. So I started looking for people who would be similar mindset, philosophy to make a really good coach on the team.
You like going back to that time when it first got started, like I'm sure there are a lot of people who are joining us right now who are thinking to themselves, what do you mean you didn't collect email addresses? And what do you mean you didn't have a shopping cart set up? And, you know, all of these things. But like, it was the wild, wild west back then. Like, we were just trying to wing it and hope that anybody in the world would find us.
Yeah. Someone sent me free hummus, and it was like a big day, and not like a box of hummus, like a container of hummus. And that was like week made.
You got me hungry right now, man. It's I was a teenager back when all that was happening, and I remember when Twitter first came out, and it was like, I remember tweeting every 5 minutes, like, walk to the store, like, had a glass of milk, like that's what it was back then. Yep. The food thing brings me to a question that is normally our icebreaker, but we totally forgot to ask it. And I'm sure you've seen this on our chats pretty nonstop, but this will determine if Jason continues to host the chat or you. So are you ready for this question?
Let's have it.
Pineapple on pizza, yay or nay?
Yeah, I'm all about it, but I'll eat almost anything that's on pizza.
All right, I guess I'm asking the next question, Jason. But before that, do you have any crude New York remark about that?
Nah, I'm beaten down at this.
He had one like last week where he was like, "You just like putting acid on acid, I guess."
Yeah, like, I don't understand it. Like, oh, this acid tastes so good, I need more acid on it. Like, nobody's ever said that, and yet here we are adding acid to acid when it comes to pineapple on pizza.
Tomatoes a fruit, man. Tomatoes a fruit.
That's true.
So I guess I'll ask the next question then. So your coaching style, you focus on more than just pace and performance. You're trying to help people have more fun, prevent injuries. Like, what are some of the top tips that you would have to make running more enjoyable and sustainable for people?
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the big things for me is I want people to not do one and done races because they had such an awful experience training or the race was so awful. And so a lot of it is sort of figuring out what's going to make training more enjoyable for them. And it can be such a variety of things. People are terrified of groups, and that's okay. Like, but maybe we can encourage that, or, you know, what is it that we can do? I think one of the things I started to figure out is there's no one perfect way for everyone to train. And so if you're like, I hate track workouts, cool, like let's not do track workouts. We can go do other things to work on speed. And that was me for a really long time. I only started to kind of enjoy them in the last few years when I had other people to do it with. And I think that's a big piece of it. And then obviously, like, it's all over social media, but helping people figure out what the heck easy runs actually means. Because I think we get burnout and injured because we hear it, but we don't know what it means. And so helping people figure that out and kind of like, cool, running is more enjoyable when you don't feel like dying every time you do it.
Yeah. And to your point, like, it's all over the internet, but I've had this conversation with other coaches too. And I think that, like, because it's all over the internet, there's so much like information overload. So like, how do you yourself like break past that information overload and like break through the riffraff of info out there?
Yeah, it's not easy. I think for me, I always think about if I was in a presentation or have gone to something, like, I want actionable information out of it. And so instead of just saying do 80% of your runs easy, like, okay, what is the talk test so that you can figure out easy? Or what is the rate of perceived exertion scale, and try to explain that, because that's very much me. Like, I'm tactical, I'm action oriented, and so that's kind of the goal. I feel like when I'm providing information is what can you take and like start using right now.
Yeah, I'd be one of those people that falls in the realm of hating track workouts. Like, speed workouts, they're part of the deal, but the idea of going to a track and running around 400 meters just is not for me. And I was fortunate. I lived in an area that we actually had like a 1 mile flat loop. So it was like perfect to do a track workout and just go around the 1 mile. So my advice, I've been doing this stuff for 17 years for people, is like, find what works for you too, right? Like, you can do that. And all of this stuff does tend to get to be more fun. Before I go to our next question, for those of you who are joining us, we're talking to Amanda Brooks of Run to the Finish. If you have questions for her, please type them either into the comment box or hit the little question mark on the bottom there. We have so many people joining us, and I'm seeing all the names fly by. I don't know if you know who this person is, but I could not stop internally laughing at their name, which was Wrinkled Sneakers. I'm hoping that it's like somebody who either has a pair of shoes that they've got like 10,000 miles on, or somebody who's been running for decades at this point. I hope.
Yeah.
This
It's either Wrinkled Sneakers or somebody who's been running for decades, one or the other.
I hope so. We mentioned your virtual run club in the intro. So can you give us more information about your virtual run club? How can people join it? What's involved in the virtual run club that you offer?
Yeah, so we obviously have one-on-one coaching, but I know that that is cost prohibitive for a lot of people. So I tried to create virtual run clubs so that people get access to the courses I've created. So there's 3 different strength training programs. There's a nutrition course I did with a sports RD, masters runners course, and some things like that. Plus you get access to our private Facebook group where all of the coaches are. So it gives you that place to ask and get answers from a coach and not just from the internet. So you'll get feedback from the group, but you know a coach is always going to respond to a question. And I think that's just so beneficial. So it's not the same as getting a custom plan, but at least if you're like, I like my free plan, this works pretty well, but man, I have questions in between. I missed a week, or what the heck are hill sprints, or how do I do a tempo run? You have a place to kind of find that and get that information.
So the landscape of running in and of itself is still the same, but it's changed since you and I first met about a decade ago, where today people are going longer. There's obviously trail running is growing. You've got different events like last person standing events now. So how is the landscape of running changed that has kind of forced you to change your approach to coaching as well?
I honestly think the biggest change has been strength training. I mean, nobody talked about that when I started in 2002. I wasn't talking about it in 2012. And now, so that is part of our coaching. It's like, no, you're going to strength train. This is part of your plan now. It's just a must do. And it took me a long time to understand all of that, because I remember doing an interview actually with Ryan Hall when he was in his heyday, and he was like, I don't strength train. If you want to get better at running, you run. So here we are later, amusing to see, but that was the prevailing attitude. And so I feel like that piece has really been a massive shift.
Yeah, like strength training is so important for today in comparison to when we started blogging and talking about it. To your point, nobody ever mentioned it once. And nowadays you can't miss it, right? And so how do you approach strength training so that athletes do, are able to prevent injury and have fun with this? And then do you run into scenarios as a coach where the athlete's like, why am I strength training? Like, why would I be doing this?
It's gotten better where most people will say, I know I need to strength train, but I haven't been or I don't want to. And I think a lot of it is initially we don't enjoy it because it is not running. And so some of it is overcoming that barrier. And one of the things I really like to do is just have people start with short workouts. So cool, can you just do 10 minutes a day? I developed like a 30-day core program. So I hit all those spots that are going to prevent injuries. 10 minutes. It's like your gateway. So now it's a habit. I've started to build some of those things. Okay, 10 minutes wasn't that bad. What if I did a 20-minute full body workout? And I think some of it is that, like, take away the idea that you need to do an hour and it's going to be all these things that are super new to you. Like, initially it's just start and like the basics work. So there's a lot of complex stuff on the internet, but the basics still work really well.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit, because that's something that I always like to ask experts in running too. Is like there's an emphasis in social media on like the sexy workout, on like the box jumps, like the sprints on the track, and like running up the hills. But like, and talk a little bit about the importance of like doing the unsexy stuff every single day and like doing the boring stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I talk about doing your warm-up about 1,000,000 times a week. And that is the boring stuff. But the warm-up is where I sneak in a lot of that physical therapy, prehab type stuff. So, monster band walks and all those things, glute bridges that you're like, oh yeah, I know I need to do that. But if it becomes part of your routine and it takes 5 minutes before you don't end up needing to take time off, that's where I'm like cost benefit ratio. It's small amount of time for a big benefit. So that's kind of one of the big pieces. And then we do talk a lot about hills, but it's because they actually work. There's some really cool studies around hill repeats. They're one of the few like proven ways to get faster. They suck, but hill repeats really do work. So I love them early in a training program.
I have a philosophy: when in doubt, run the hillier route. That's it. Like, it'll work for you. It sucks. It hurts, but it definitely works.
It does.
One unsexy movement that you love to do, like in the prehab type of thing.
So the lunge matrix, I think, has been in my routine since I had an IT band issue in like 2007. So I have done that like multiple times a week for well over a decade now. And it has kept my IT band happy for many, many years. So it's really just you're hitting different planes of motion, and it takes no time at all to do. There's no weights involved, so it's not like, oh, I'm growing my glutes, but it's just, I'm keeping everything balanced.
I'm a big fan of the drinking bird. I do 10 per leg before every run. And I honestly, actually, before every workout, regardless of, even if I'm getting in the pool, because you're going to be kicking. And so it's just to get the blood flow and get the body ready to go and take on the challenge of whatever workout you're doing. Oh, what about you? What's the one boring, non-sexy thing that you love doing?
Well, first, I'd like to know if drinking bird is the same thing as what I'm about to say. But I love doing single-legged deadlifts. That is something I swear by. Not with weights or anything, but as kind of like a warm-up, as incorporated in my workouts, just to like kind of work those like small muscles in my feet and just get them warmed up. So that's one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, it's close. They're about the same thing.
Yeah.
I was curious because I've seen some of your warm-ups and I'm like, I think I do that, but then I look like a flamingo while doing it.
Yeah, it's not every day you see a 5'6" Puerto Rican dude doing drinking birds and wondering like, what in the hell is this guy doing before he starts running? But that's what I do.
I've seen it all, man. It's 10 of those, and then like I have that picture of you taking a nap like right before jackpot in the hoodie.
So what's one of the workouts that you go back to for your athletes? And I know it's going to vary because of distances, right? So let's talk marathon and under at this point. Is there a workout that you're like, yeah, when I'm coaching athletes or when my coaches are coaching athletes, this is one of those key workouts that will help in the marathon training build up?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like, kind of like we said, every athlete is so different. There's a lot of different ones, but lately I have been a really big fan of having some fast finish long runs in the training cycle. And any distance, I think it sort of forces you into that mindset of like, it's gonna be hard at the end of the race. And it really is like this mental prep and kind of like how to lean into that. And especially if you've been doing a decently long run, it's kind of hard to get your legs to suddenly shift gears. So that's become one lately that I've really liked throwing in there.
Yeah, I'm training for Lake Sonoma 50, and we're going to be including strides at the end of those runs, because to your point, it changes from the long, quote unquote, slow day into all of a sudden you've got these pickups for, 4 to 8 30-second pickup strides to get you there.
Yeah.
As people keep coming on to the show, thank you very much for joining us. We're talking to Amanda Brooks of Run to the Finish. If you have questions or comments on there, please type them in. If it's a question, please use the question mark thing, because so many people are joining. These comments are flying by and we don't have a chance to capture them. So if you have a question, put it in where the little question mark is. We can get to it.
Yeah, I actually have a couple comments that I took down. Somebody named Kendra earlier was mentioning the use of mini bands, and I got to say, I don't know if they're the same as resistance bands, but I do love my resistance bands for working out. We had a person named Katie talk about loving dynamic stretches, and Lana says that she hates stretching. Same, Lana, same. I know I have to do it, but not a fan.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the dynamic warm up beforehand. Like when we first started, Amanda, like static stretching was the thing. And so how do you combat that? Because as beginners are coming on board, right? There's got to be an education process that you take them through. So walk us through that scenario of how you walk through beginners and this idea of static stretching versus dynamic stretching and warming up and the importance of it.
Yeah, it's certainly something we still see schools having people do. So we will have new athletes come in that are like, but my coach just had me doing this. I'm like, I get it. Like, it's just been around forever. I try to explain the difference as what we want when we're running is actually for our muscles to be able to act like a spring. And so when you static stretch something, you're trying to loosen it up. So you're actually losing a little bit of that spring to it. And if you do a long stretch, thinking about like your joints, you've now loosened everything around the joint. So it's not as stable anymore. So in a dynamic movement, we're just kind of like opening up range of motion. We're getting the blood flowing. We're lubricating the joints. We're telling the body like, hey, I need you to get prepared to do something hard. Whereas static stretching is actually like, hey, calm down. I'm slowing down. I'm taking long, deep breaths. So you're kind of doing the opposite of telling your body to get ready to do something hard.
Man, I love that. I never, all the years of running, I never really thought of it that way. But that's a great way to explain it to people so that they can understand it. Speaking of understanding, so you have a book, Run to the Finish. What inspired you and motivated you to write this book for the public and sharing it differently than your website and the tips that you're providing with regards to social media?
It was interesting because I had a publisher reach out to me, and initially I sort of said, I don't know, like, isn't everything already out there? And I sat on it for a little while, and I started noticing I was getting this very consistent message of, thank you for not showing your pace all the time. Thank you for talking to me, even though I'm not a Boston qualifier, and I started realizing like, literally the mass majority of us are right in the middle. Like, we're the middle of the pack, and we just want someone to feel like, hey, I see you and I get what you're going through. And it doesn't matter if you're going out to run a PR or to run a Boston qualifying time. You can be doing this for fun and still be looking to like kind of improve without it taking over your life. And so that has been kind of the message that I've gotten back from people, has just been like, oh my gosh, this spoke to me. And so it's been really, really exciting. Probably the most rewarding thing I've done has been getting those messages, because it was like, okay, the purpose of it has really landed and hit home. So that's been really cool.
That's impressive, because you've been doing this for a while, and to have people commenting to you and having that be the thing that, hits home for you and means a lot to you. Is there anything, over the course of the past, 10, 15 years that you can think about that brings a smile to your face automatically, whether it's a comment from a person, anything that's outside of your own goals and PRs and stuff that you're like, yeah, this is awesome. I'm glad that I stuck with this, 15 years ago.
Yeah, truly, almost every week I get multiple messages from people that like, this or that thing helped me. And I feel like every single time they show up is when I'm having a moment of like, do I want to keep doing this? Like, social media, writing things, fighting with Google. And so that is like, it's really nice. And probably even like my favorite marathon I've done was when I was pacing someone else. So it wasn't even like my PR marathon. It was the marathon I did for someone else, because I just had a lot more fun.
That's awesome. I'm going to ask you a question you don't have to have an answer to immediately. But if you can think back to when we first were on Blogspot and all of the different people that were participating in these blogs and commenting on each other's blogs and whatnot, is there somebody that you're like, man, that doesn't do it anymore, and you're like, man, I really wish that I would see something from them today?
Ooh, that's a good question.
We'll let you think about it and
I think.
back. That's like, cause I'm asking myself that same question and I don't have an answer for you either. But like, I try to think about, like, do you remember the show Saved by the Bell?
Yeah.
So you remember like when they graduate high school and they all leave and it's like this moment of, not anxiety, but like sadness that they've all dispersed. And like, I always think about when we were the old school bloggers back in the day and like all of a sudden everybody's graduating and there's nobody around anymore. And so I always think about that often, like where are those people and what are they doing today? So you don't have to have an answer right now, but we can come back to that. So one of the last questions we'll ask you before we get into our rapid fire, which again is predominantly food questions, is what are some of the common mistakes you see beginner runners making when they're first starting out, and how can they avoid the injury and frustration that is typically going to come from that?
I think one of the big things is ego. So we come in with this idea of like, I need to only run. If I walk, I'm not a runner. And that's just unequivocally like not accurate. But most folks enjoy running more when they allow themselves like the slow progressive buildup. So that could mean run walk. For some folks, they don't love it, but I actually have them go back and learn how to power walk first. So if you're running a 20-minute mile, but I can get you to focus on learning how to power walk a 15-minute mile and then transition to run walk, suddenly run walk feels so much easier. And so for me, most of that is our ego. We have an idea of what it's supposed to look like. And so just kind of letting go of that and being like, my goal is just to get a little bit better consistently and start from where I am, not where I think I'm supposed to be.
I got to tell you, like, one thing that humbled me immediately on that early in my running career was when I got into trail running and I saw my first hill. Like I'm like halfway up that thing. I'm like, I'm not running this thing.
Yeah. Trails are a whole different ballgame, and I feel like they help people realize like walking is fine.
I remember having a conversation with some friends when I first started trail running, and they were like, I don't want to do that because you don't get to run the whole time. And I'm thinking to myself, that's exactly why I'm doing this. Like,
Yes.
you know, like when you tell people you run 100-mile races and they're like, how do you run for 100 miles? And I'm like, you're probably running 40 over the course of the entire 30 hours and hiking/walking for 60 and eating all the food in the land as you're doing it. And they're like, oh, that sounds way better than running, you know, a marathon for 4 to 5 hours or whatever, however long it is. Which actually brings in another question before we go, and I apologize if we're keeping you a little long, but are you starting to see, or have you been seeing more and more people come to your coaching business for ultras and trail running than marathon, 5K to marathon distance?
So in 2021, 2022, there was a big uptick in that. And then this year I've seen less of it. And so I don't know if that's just as we're now shifting back to more road races being available again, or I'm not sure. But this year, because I was prepared to like add another coach that was only focused on that. And then that request has kind of slowed a little bit this year. I am seeing though, more road runners who are saying, I want to kind of do what you do, where I just do a trail run like once a week because it's fun. And so I think they're kind of getting into that, like, it just looks fun, but how do I put that into a training plan?
You can tell them it doesn't just look fun, it is fun.
It's fun.
By the way, we just had somebody join us whose handle is tacos and sarcasm, and I've never felt more connected to somebody ever.
Oh man, two of my favorite things in the whole world right there.
So Amanda, where can people find you besides obviously here on Instagram at Run to the Finish?
So the website is Run to the Finish. I think I have pretty much every social channel as Run to the Finish. That's the benefits of having been around a long time.
As a marketing professor and somebody who's been in marketing for 30 years, like I love the branding. Like go capture it all. Don't change the name. So like for us, everywhere you look, it's Run Try Mag. You can find us on every platform under the same thing. And so nobody can get us confused for something else when they find us. Yeah. So thanks for being a part of our more serious questions, shall we say. And now we're going to shift focus to have a little bit more fun, especially when it comes to food. As endurance athletes, it's super important that we're eating, but it's also super important that we have fun with our food and don't get hung up on, you know, good food versus bad food. So you answered the first question, I'll say incorrectly, which is fine. You have a chance to make it up.
You spelled correctly wrong, Jason. You said
When it comes to Oreos, are you a fan of the original Oreo or are you a double stuff person?
I like the double stuff. I mean, if we're going to go for the cream, just give me the cream.
Yes, please.
So does it mean that the Oreo thins are totally out?
Yeah, that's a waste of my time.
Yeah, it's a cracker. It's not a cookie. Like, stop.
No, that's a no-go. Plus, I have to, it's kind of like if you eat a Kit Kat, you eat it bite by bite. Oreo is the same thing. I need to eat the top piece, then the cream, then the bottom. Like, there is a process, and what am I going to do with the thin? There's nothing there.
I love it.
Love it.
Have you seen the Oreos?
The what one?
The Oreo Cakesters?
Oh, no.
Yeah, they're just stealing from Ding Dongs. Like, it's just too the cream filling. Like, come on, guys. Let's be a little bit more original here. I mean, we 143rd flavor of Oreo at this point before we use Cakesters. Licorice. Are you a fan of licorice?
Yes, and I even like black licorice, black jelly beans.
Nice. So are you a Red Vines or a Twizzler person then?
I grew up with Twizzlers, so I would say Twizzlers are probably more of the go-to.
And do you make it into a straw?
I've not done that in a long, long time. But we definitely did that growing up.
Are Peeps a real candy or are they just marshmallows covered in dust?
I mean, they're about as much sugar as you can get, so I feel like that makes them a real candy. They may have more sugar than most other candies, I'm not sure.
I'm going to say that they're not a candy because you wouldn't go to your sugar bowl and just eat a spoonful of sugar and be like, this is candy, it's great.
True.
What about candy corn? Is candy corn a real candy or is it just earwax covered in sugar?
Wax. It's wax. Absolutely wax.
Like, I wonder how this company stays in business. Like, Brock's candy corn, they make circus peanuts, they make like all the stuff you find in the middle of nowhere gas stations, and yet they're still in business. I don't know how.
No.
I have a market, Jason, and I have no idea how. I'm sure maybe it's on nostalgia because every single person we've said who loves candy corn is like, oh, my grandmother used to have them, or like somebody used to have them. So maybe it's rooted in nostalgia.
A lot of people will tell me I just need to eat it mixed with peanuts, and then I'm like, just ruining peanuts.
Exactly. Right? Like, they're like, yeah, I need the sugar and the salty. And I'm like, nah, not that way you don't. No. Stuck in your teeth, too. Like, don't get me started. Creamy or crunchy, peanut butter or nut butter if you have allergies.
Oh, I will eat any nut butter of any kind in any shape or form.
So which would you prefer, creamy or crunchy?
I'm probably creamy most of the time.
So when you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, do you put the peanut butter on one slice of bread and the jelly on that same slice and then fold it over? Or do you put peanut butter on one slice, jelly on another, and then smash them together?
I put the peanut butter on a spoon and just eat it directly.
No sandwiches?
No. I eat peanut butter by the spoon, or actually I really like mixing peanut butter into my cereal. This is a weird habit I started many years ago that my husband is like, what is happening over there? But Cheerios, peanut butter, and then I'll use Core Power as my milk. So, I mean, I'm hitting all the bases.
So Cheerios, I was going to ask, Cheerios is the go-to cereal then?
It is most of the time.
Top 3 cereals for you are?
Ooh. So Cheerios, because it's a go-to, but Cinnamon Toast Crunch, big win. Maybe Golden Puffs. That might be the off-brand. I don't know what the original name was.
Never heard of Puffs.
I'm the old guy. Raisin Bran, shredded wheat, and grape nuts all day long. Like
Grape nuts. No.
it's like eating Pop Rocks, but they're made out of bran, right? Because they're like all. Is a hot dog a taco or a sandwich?
I say a sandwich, and I feel like there was one of those Foods That Made America that probably talked about this and decided what it was.
Are you saying Foods That Made America because you've seen me talk about it, or is that something that's like at the top of your viewing list?
My husband will watch any of the Made America shows, so I have probably seen quite a few of them.
I think your husband and I need to have a watch party. I've purchased every single episode and I've rewatched them over and over again. It's fascinating. Red velvet cake. Is it a real cake or is it just dressed up chocolate cake going out to dinner?
I don't think it tastes like chocolate cake. I don't know what it tastes like. I just taste the icing, the frosting. So that's a good question. It's mostly frosting.
Mostly frosting. So speaking of which, what's your favorite cake flavor?
Ooh, I'm really like a vanilla. I like a good vanilla with a really good like buttercream frosting.
Bagel combination. Favorite bagel and butter or cream cheese combination is?
Ooh, I don't do that. So I don't do a lot of dairy because it just doesn't work for me. So, but I will sneak in like the Asagio bagel or something like that every once in a while.
Nice, a very, very good choice. Asagio cheese. Favorite ice cream? Favorite flavor of ice cream?
Yeah, same issue with the dairy. I miss froyo. Like of all the things I've taken out, I miss froyo.
What are your top three candies?
Ooh. Jelly beans, because I have actually been using them to fuel runs. Cinnamon gummy bears, same thing, fuel during runs. And then Red Hots. Oh, they were always a favorite.
Very interesting choices. No chocolate in that list whatsoever.
I do like a good dark chocolate, but for some reason, chocolate is like a separate category than candy.
If you're putting pineapple on pizza, are you also going to put pineapple on your burger?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're the first person who's adamantly been like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
All right, so last food question for you. Brownies. Are you an edge corner person or are you a center cut person?
I do like the edge, but I also really like a gooey brownie. So the ideal scenario is you get a little edge and it's kind of gooey.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us. As I said in the intro, like it's been so awesome to watch your career and your platform take off from the first time that we talked. Like I said, must have been 10 to 12 years ago. I'm proud to see somebody from our little corner of the internet way back when be where you are today and helping a lot of athletes out. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks. It was really great to chat.
Thanks, everybody. Join us next week, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for our next Fireside Chat. Have a great night. Bye-bye.